And now Mr. Farage for the FD Group.
Thank you. What we're seeing in this chamber this morning, and indeed across the whole of Europe, is an irreconcilable cultural difference between Greece and Germany, a split between the north and the south of Europe. The European project is actually beginning to die. Nobody in this room will recognise that, but actually the peoples of Europe are saying we were never asked whether we wanted this. This has been foisted upon us. And we need to understand why EMU doesn't work. Those monsters, Kohl and Mitterrand, backed up with a clever but dangerous Delors, believed that if they put in place an economic and monetary union, then as night follows day, there would be political union, that there would be an acceptance of this project, that the north and south of Europe would converge, that we'd all start to love each other, that we'd all begin to feel a European identity, that we'd all begin to show allegiance to the flag and the anthem. Those of us, of course, that criticised this were told that we were extremists and we lacked vision. Well, one vision we didn't lack is we understood that the countries of Europe are different, and that if you try and force together different people or different economies without first seeking the consent of those people, it is unlikely to work. And the plan has failed. This isn't just Greece we're talking about today. The whole of the Mediterranean now finds itself in the wrong currency. And yet virtually nobody in the political arena has got the courage to stand up and say that. Indeed, I feel that the continent is now divided from north to south. There is a new Berlin Wall, and it's called the euro. And the old enmities have been resumed. Just listen to the way that the German leader of the Christian Democrat group this morning attacked Mr. Spiras. I think it was absolutely disgusting, but it shows the way north and south now feel about each other. Mr. Tsipras, your country should never have joined the euro. I think you acknowledge that, but the big banks, the big businesses and big politics forced you in. Goldman Sachs, the German arms manufacturers, they were all very happy. And when the bailouts began, they weren't for the Greek people. Those bailouts were to bail out French, German and Italian banks. They haven't helped you at all. And these years of austerity, these years of high unemployment, of increasing poverty, none of it's worked. In fact, your debt-GDP ratio has gone from 100% at the start of the crisis to 180% right now. It would be madness, sir, to continue on this course. You have been very brave. You called that referendum. When one of your predecessors tried to do the same, the bully boys of Brussels had him removed. They tried their best again. Mr. Juncker said you would have to leave the euro and leave the European Union. Even Mr. Schulz, the President of the Parliament, who one would have thought might be neutral, said that if the Greeks voted no, their power supplies may even go down. There were threats and bullying, but the Greeks stood firm. But, sir, you cannot have your cake and eat it. They will give you no more, these people. They can't afford to. If they give you more, they'll have to give other Eurozone members more. So your moment has come. And frankly, if you've got the courage, you should lead the Greek people out of the Eurozone with your head held high. Get back your democracy. Get back control of your country. Give your people the leadership and the hope that they crave. Yes, it'll be tough for the first few months, but with a devalued currency and with friends of Greece all over the world, you will recover.
Nigel Farage is joining us in a Fox Business exclusive. He, of course, the UK independent leader. And Nigel, we're going to keep the pictures up on the screen because it is a fast developing story. But yeah. What does this represent right now? Is this the death of Greece as a Eurozone nation? Because these protests are awfully frightening. I'm sure the people inside Parliament who are now in less than 2 hours going to vote on this know about what's going on.
What is happening there is the death of democracy. Let's just get a handle on this. I know it's a business programme, but let's just think about the politics for a moment. Just 2 weeks ago, the Greek people had a referendum to talk about, the terms of their Euro membership. Despite massive threats, Eurocrats telling them if you vote no, the power supplies will fail, you'll all lose your jobs. The people said, we don't care, and they voted no. despite the fact they voted no, their own Prime Minister, who had called that referendum, was, as you said yourself in the introduction, effectively waterboarded in Brussels by the French and German leaders and has signed up to a package significantly more strict than the one the people said no to. Have a think about this. The reason democracy works is it acts as a safety valve. And if you take away from people the most powerful thing they possess in a free country, namely their ability through the ballot box to change their destiny. If you take that away, then what are you left with other than civil disorder?
Well,
I am not in the least bit surprised by what's happening on the streets.
I personally am not surprised. No. I got a sense that we would see civil unrest the closer that this got, especially considering you now have the Germans who are absolutely furious. Finland, you have certain factions of the government there who are very unhappy about this situation. Let us just catch our viewers up on what's going on here. There is outright violence going on outside the parliament in Greece, where in less than 2 hours the parliament is to vote on that very severe anti-austerity plan, the very plan that the prime minister had urged his people to vote against, thinking that he could call some type of bluff, or rather bluff, the rest of the European Union. Nigel, let me just say, the Greek parliament with 300 members, it appears that more than half of his own Syriza party for the prime minister are against this. Not all of them are voting members of parliament. There are 15 communist members who will vote. The Golden Dawn, I mean, there are all kinds of groups here. The independents have 13 votes. How do you think this vote is going to go down?
Ironic, isn't it, that the European project that was designed to bring the peoples of Europe together and give us a harmonious future now sees in the Greek parliament a party called Golden Dawn, who were outright admirers of German fascism in the 1930s. It shows you how low things have sunk. I don't know what's going to happen in this vote, but I'll tell you this. Mr. Tsipras is finished. He's finished because he marched his country up the hill. He said we're going to rebel, we're going to change the terms, and when he won the referendum, he backed down. I met him on the Wednesday after the vote on the Sunday. He looked a beaten man already. I can't predict tonight's result, but I can predict that Tsipras will not last long. If I was a member of the Greek Parliament, I tonight would vote against this package, and I would advocate leaving the euro
and letting the banks go bust. Going back to the drachma?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Go back to the drachma, let the banks go bust. Yes, it'll mean a massive devaluation.
Okay, let me jump in here and ask you this, sir. The UK involvement, of course, not a Eurozone currency member, but a European Union member. George Osborne has demanded that the Eurozone countries indemnify the Treasury against any losses that Britain would be forced to take on. But as it turns out, if that European stability mechanism is forced to help open the banks, which have been closed for nearly 2 weeks now, you in the UK would be on the hook for about 15% of it, which I believe works out to be about $7 to $9 billion, maybe even 11 billion euros.
Yeah, I think whichever way this cuts, it'll cost the UK taxpayer money. And I'm obviously less than thrilled by that. The one really good piece of news is, despite the fact our senior politicians and some of our big corporate businesses said we should join the euro, thank goodness we said no. Either way, Osborne represents the European political class. They're trying to keep Greece inside the euro. Greece needs to leave the euro to have any chance at all of recovering.
Das Wort hat Herr Farage.
Mr. Farage has the floor.
Thank you. Look, nobody in their right minds would not agree that it was a sensible thing to do to get France and Germany together round the table, to break bread with each other, to have a trade deal with each other back in the 1950s, and to work as sovereign democratic nations together for peace. All of that was absolutely right and high-minded. Sadly, the whole thing has become corrupted. Tony Blair said the EU today is no longer about peace, it is about power, and how right he was, and how that power has shifted. When Kohl and Mitterrand came here representing their countries 25 years ago, it was a partnership of equals, but no longer. France is now severely diminished, trapped inside a currency, frankly, from which he can't recover. And the French voice in this relationship and in Europe is little more now, frankly, than a pipsqueak. We're living, and it's an irony, isn't it, that a project that was designed to contain German power has now given us a totally German-dominated Europe. Just look at the euro. Germany has a currency that is undervalued by 20%. a growing and massive trade surplus, and most growth in the German economy since the collapse of 2008 has indeed been in exports to other Eurozone countries, such as your very big arms sales to countries like Greece. And when we have a general election that says a country like Greece wants to change direction, well, I'm sorry, but that now must be brushed aside because the Germans don't want it. And what must count as perhaps the worst piece of public policy seen in modern Europe for half a century, when you compounded the already failing and flawed EU common asylum policy by saying to the whole world, please come to Europe, and we saw, frankly, virtually a stampede, and we learn that 80% of those that are coming are not Syrian refugees. In fact, what you've done is to open the door to young, male, economic migrants, many of whom, I have to say, behave in a rather aggressive manner, quite the opposite to what you would ever expect to see from any refugee. And yet when that failure is met by objections from countries like Hungary, their opinions are crushed. This isn't a Europe of peace, it's a Europe of division, it's a Europe of disharmony, it's a Europe that is a recipe for resentment. And yet, faced with all this failure, both of you said the same thing today. You said Europe isn't working, so we must have more Europe, more of the same failing. Well, there is, I think, a bright star on the horizon. It's called the British referendum. And given that none of you want to concede Britain the ability to take back control of our own borders, a Brexit now looks more likely than at any point in modern time. And I hope and pray that Britain voting to leave the European Union will be the beginning of the end of a project, however noble its original intentions, has gone rotten.
Ja, du setzt euch da wieder hin, Junge.
So, if he wanted to go, then he starts again.
I think you know this is my alternative CV. What have I done now? I'm discriminatory, sexist, racist. I was a banker. Was I a banker?
Well, no, you were a stockbroker.
No, I wasn't.
You were a stockbroker.
No, you haven't even got your facts right, mate.
You're selling metals. I see.
You haven't even got your facts right.
I've been to one of your so-called public meetings where you said I used to sell metals as if you were a metal merchant, as if you were actually getting your hands dirty holding bronze, and you weren't. No, I don't have to. I don't have to. I haven't had an opportunity. I haven't had an opportunity to say what I want to say to this man. I've been to your meetings. I've been to your meetings.
You've been shouting at me in the street for weeks.
I've not been shouting at you.
Now, homophobia. Let's just deal with the homophobia, shall we?
Your potential voters.
So the chairman of the UKIP LGBT group is here today. Would you like to meet him?
No, but you've had one resign.
No.
You've had one resign.
No.
You've had one resign, haven't you?
Hang on a second.
Have you had one resign?
I've just offered you the opportunity
have you had
to
one
meet
resign?
the chairman of our LGBT group.
I'm not interested in meeting your
to
chairman.
Sit down,
Why?
have a cup of tea.
I'm not a politician.
And, do you know,
I'm just an ordinary person.
The other thing is, we like to be civilised about all of this. So if you want to come and meet, I've also got with me the first black mayor of Gloucester. He was a Labour mayor of Gloucester. He was out knocking on doors last night. Would you like to meet him?
Have you got the Bristol candidate with you today? Have you got Johnny Rockard with you today?
So what's he done wrong?
What's he done wrong?
Yes.
He's a disgusting person that shouldn't
Why?
be fielding for a political seat.
Why is that?
Why is that?
Yeah, tell me.
Because he's a disgusting kind of a man with no moral. He's got no moral.
Oh.
You think it's all right? You think it's all right for a porn star?
Are you a Cromwellian Puritan?
Do you think it's? No, I'm not. Do you think it's all right for a porn star to stand for election?
He's done nothing illegal.
And
we're a party. We're a party that believes live and let live. Be happy, everybody. Let's have some fun.
Well, with me now is the UKIP leader, Nigel Farage. Well, let's deal with your Sharia law man first, Dean Perks. You're standing by him, are you?
Yeah, I mean, what did he say? He said that in countries where they threaten to cut your hands off, fewer people go out and steal because there is a deterrent. I mean,
he said Sharia law works as a prevention.
Well, maybe it does in some countries, but it doesn't mean he was advocating it for this country. It was an off-the-cuff comment, not particularly wise, but hardly, an offence for which I'm going to discipline him.
He also reportedly called Enoch Powell visionary and called someone retarded on Twitter. He's still an outstanding candidate.
Well, you know, half the country would call Enoch Powell visionary, wouldn't they? And the other half would vehemently disagree. And he called somebody retarded. Look, you know, we are entering... Is it any wonder? Is it any wonder that we have three parties in this country who look the same, sound the same and have no opinions, if every time someone uses a word that perhaps they ought not to, the media jump down their throat? Now, let me be clear. You know, what I think I've done very successfully is to make sure that there is absolutely no room in UKIP at all for people who are extreme or for people who spout hatred, but that is not the same as saying we can't have people in UKIP who say things that perhaps the others don't.
Well, is that the case, though? Because if you look at your candidate in Ramsgate, Martin Heal, he's a former National Front member, has faced no sanctions by the party. Is it okay for former National Front members...
You're quite right. He was 22 years in the Conservative Party. He was an officer of the Conservative Party when he came to us. Now, if you're saying...
And an ex-National Front member.
The Conservative Party had him as a local ward chairman, and he was in their party for 22 years.
I'm asking you whether it's okay... But is it okay for you to have former National Front members in your party, as long as it's former and they're not current far-right members?
Well, we are the only party in British politics who actually forbid anybody who's ever even been a member of the BNP from joining UKIP, right? The Labour Party actually has serving councillors who were elected as BNP and have defected to them. So we're the toughest party on this of all the parties in British politics. In the case of a National Front, well, perhaps we have one or two people who 40 years ago were a member of it.
And that's okay. That's okay.
Well, it's okay for the Tory party, it's okay for the Labour Party, it's okay for the Lib Dems, and in very, very small doses, it's okay for us. But when it comes to anything since 1980, anybody who's ever been a member of any extreme party is not welcome.
But have you changed your tune on this? Because the founder of UKIP, Alan Sked, told the Liverpool anti-fascist site that you at one point wanted ex-National Front candidates to be UKIP candidates. You actively wanted them to be.
No, we had a situation where we actually allowed somebody who'd been a former National Front member in the form of Buster Mottram, the well-known tennis player at one point, to join the party, and that was a mistake. You know, that was a mistake. So actually now, the ban now actually does extend to anybody new joining the party who was even in the National Front. So we did allow a small number of people to join who had been part of the National Front, and in most cases that's been a mistake, so we won't even allow those people anymore.
Well, let's look at some of your other candidates. Alex Wood, for example, who apparently made a Nazi salute. Councillor Rob Fraser, who reportedly used a well-known racist phrase. Anna-Marie Crampton, who you saw in
So when Nick Clegg comes on here,
wait a minute.
Say to Nick Clegg, what about your councillor?
Let me finish this question. They were all suspended from the party. Are any of those back in the party?
I don't think so. I don't know. I don't run party discipline.
You should know, though, shouldn't you?
No, I lead the party. I don't micromanage every aspect of it. But I wonder, when Nick Clegg comes on, do you say, well, what about your councillor, Nick, who in April was sent to prison for planting bombs? I mean, this is the ridiculous thing, isn't it? We put forward, in those elections in May, 1,740 candidates, which for us was a Herculean task, much bigger than anything we've ever attempted before. Now, half a dozen of them have caused us embarrassment, and you quote every single one. But the fact is, you know, 99% of the people that stand for UKIP and want to get involved in UKIP are decent, ordinary, hard-working people keen to make a big difference in British politics. And all the media can all you can do is focus on a handful of people.
You think it's just a handful?
Well, we know it's a handful.
Right. You've done your checks now.
Huge amounts of money.
You hadn't a minute ago, but you've done your checks now.
Huge amounts of money was spent going through those 1,740 people at the local elections,
so
a degree of scrutiny that no political party in Britain's local candidates have ever been put through.
So do you believe that David Cameron's campaign's chief, Linton Crosby, is raking muck on your councillors and candidates? Do you believe that?
Well, I think the point is they've lost the arguments. You know,
but do you believe that he's doing that? He denies it.
It would not surprise me at all. You know, they've got him for all sorts of abuse over the years. I have to say the story rings true. They're not going to debate Europe with us, or immigration with us, or grammar schools with us, or wind turbines with us. They know they've lost the argument, not just with us, but with their own voters and supporters. So what they've decided to do is to go for the player and not the ball. I'm not surprised at all.
Nigel Farage, thank you very much for joining me. Krish.